Gigi Buffon snitched on Zinedine Zidane in the 2006 World Cup final and made sure the Frenchman was sent off for nutting Marco Matterazzi. Despite standing 15 yards away as Zidane ball rushed into Materazzi, Buffon felt the thud of his teammate collapsing. Moments later, the goalkeeper lifted the trophy after one of the most shocking World Cup finals to date. How did Buffon feel about prematurely ending Zidane's career in his last professional match, and was he conflicted about dobbing in the Frenchman? It's all revealed in his memoir, Saved. Buffon writes about the madness of goalkeeping, fending off allegations of betting, and how the pressure of representing Juventus drove him to a panic attack on the pitch. In this video, I'll tell you about the main themes in the book and give you my honest thoughts on it. Steve Agrizovic once said, "People say goalkeepers are mad, but I always thought it was the other way around. At least the ball comes to us and we don't have to chase it around." With that, there's always been a bit of a narrative of the goalkeeper as the eccentric outsider. While Buffon started as a midfielder, he actually wrote that being a goalkeeper is madness with a crucial sense of balance. He spoke to his gloves, goalposts and boots, saying, "To be honest, you'll go mad if you don't speak to anyone." And Parma were of course glad Buffon stopped being a midfielder and switched to between the sticks. While Gigi wanted to join AC Milan in 1991, when he had his trial at Parma, the club told him that they wouldn't let him leave without him signing for the club. Now, these early chapters, which cover Buffon's time at Parma, are quite rapidly paced and written almost in a stream of consciousness, which I wasn't a massive fan of, but it definitely gave Buffon quite a unique voice. We need to remember also that this book was translated from Italian to English by the author John Foote, so sometimes that translation might produce some quite clunky phrases. And if you're enjoying this video, please do check out one of my other videos covering Helenio Herrera and one of the most mysterious deaths in football history. Now, when discussing his early years, Buffon talks about the sacrifices he had to make. He talks about sabotaging his body, diving on snow, weeds, divots, and he actually ends up with bunions covering his hips. While the young Buffon had a disdain for rules and in true madcap goalkeeper style was actually fined 1 million lire for speeding around a training camp in a golf buggy, he also scoured petrol stations for rubber to wear under his kit to stop himself getting injured. And this was just a really interesting insight into the mindset of goalkeepers. Like, they just think so far out of the box. He didn't ask for any, training around this or physiotherapy. He just thought, I know what, I'll go, get some old tyres from down Shell down the road. While they say goalkeepers are a zany, motley crew, Buffon actually told The Guardian later that he actually used to see other Serie A goalkeepers at petrol stations doing this. I mean, imagine that. Buffon, Pagliuca and Peruzzi all just hanging out down the petrol station like you do. Notwithstanding his unusual practices, Buffon went on to become a Parma legend, playing over 200 times for the club and also winning the UEFA Cup and the Coppa Italia. He left Parma for Juventus in 2001, and it was at Juventus that Buffon would reach the apex of the sport in chaotic circumstances. Now, weeks after Buffon's Juventus were embroiled in the Calciopoli scandal, which saw the old lady relegated to Serie B, Buffon actually helped Italy to their 4th World Cup win. The goalkeeper also grasped on Zidane and said he was one of the only players who saw the incident, and he ran up to the referee who told him that he didn't see it. Buffon then liaised with the 4th official who actually did see the incident. Of course, you'll know the story by now. Zidane got sent off, Italy won on penalties, and the rest, as they say, is history. And I vividly remember watching this all play out live as an 18-year-old, and to see Zidane, who at the time was at the absolute precipice of the sport, just butt his head right into the chest of Materazzi. I just could not believe what I was watching. And this is kind of a little bit before social media, and you wonder how much more this story would have blown up if it was in the modern era. But yeah, I was absolutely gobsmacked, and it's just one of the most shocking things I've seen in live sport. I'll never forget the TV footage of Zidane with his head bowed walking past the World Cup, knowing that this is the last time he's going to play professional football. I mean, that was just an iconic piece of footage. And reacting to what happened and what he did, Buffon said he was quite shaken up with mixed emotions and the sending off didn't make him happy at all. Well, I don't really know about the last bit. I'd be pretty fucking delighted if I was him, but still, that's just me. Shortly before the World Cup, actually, Buffon was really public enemy number one in Italy as he was questioned over allegedly placing illegal bets. Although he was cleared of all charges, Buffon was under a black cloud, he was berated by the media, and he was booed by fans in the run-up to the World Cup. Of course, Buffon always had quite a strained relationship with the Italian media, which I will get onto in just a moment. While Buffon is still adamant he did nothing wrong, he said he actually felt quite guilty around the whole situation and was fueled by anger as he entered Germany to play in the World Cup. He approached the World Cup, he said, with a new sense of determination and ferocity. Indeed, Buffon writes of a siege mentality created by the coach Marcello Lippi. Lippi just seemed to be able to silence the noise around the Italy team, which I seem to remember in England in particular, they were just super unpopular. The football wasn't that great. They also just inched past Australia in the tournament as well. One thing I did really like about Lippi, and I thought was really prudent from the coach, was that he basically told his team that they could definitely win the tournament. This was in private, but then he told his players not to tell journalists that they were favourites for the tournament or that they could win the tournament. And I thought this was a great way of, deflecting pressure from the team when they were, massively under pressure in terms of the Calciopoli scandal and what the public was saying about the Italy team. So after winning the World Cup, Buffon returned to Italy with his reputation restored and said he actually quite enjoyed playing in Serie B as Juventus were automatically promoted immediately. So it just shows that, a bad thing can happen, but there was really no need to worry about any of that, Gigi. Now, we've already seen how unorthodox Buffon could be, and he was actually a member of ultras groups with his previous clubs, Carrarese and Parma. Throughout the book, he writes about the bond he felt with ultras groups and the charity work these groups do that often goes unreported. There's one particularly crazy story when Buffon is actually driving to Florence to play Fiorentina and he's in his bright yellow Porsche. And I kind of think, well, it's maybe not the best idea to just flaunt Parma colours in Florence right before they're about to play Fiorentina. Just an idea there. Be that as it may, Buffon actually drives through a series of fights between Fiorentina and Parma Ultras, and he then comes across one of his old friends in the Ultras groups who actually has a completely bloodied head. Buffon picks him up to take him to the hospital, and as they get to a police checkpoint, the friend actually runs out of the car and gets away from the police. The police grab Buffon, slam him onto the bonnet of the car, and then they actually write a report about how Buffon allegedly resisted a public official. As is his wont, Buffon then just went straight out and just got pissed. One thing I actually quite like about this translation is that, I don't know if this is like an Italian phrase, but if ever Buffon is talking about going out drinking or clubbing, he basically just writes dancing, and I don't think this kind of translates that well. Obviously, that's no one's fault, and it's not a slight in the book, but it just kind of reads quite clunkily. I can't imagine, like Grealish or Maguire saying, "Oh, lads, should we go out dancing?" They think, "What on earth are you talking about?" So I've already touched on how Buffon was scapegoated by the Italian media and Italian society, and he actually had real mental health troubles throughout his career. When he first joined Juventus in 2001, he said he wanted to hide away, and the pressure was like being in the eye of a storm. A few years earlier, when he was at Parma, Italian society actually began linking Buffon to the far right. This was because Buffon's shirt number at Parma, 88, was said to be the number of Hitler. He also wore a shirt bearing the phrase, "He who abandons the struggle is an assassin." Buffon was later told this was actually a neo-fascist phrase. And there's a feeling throughout the book that Buffon was perhaps targeted, and that maybe led to him having these feelings of depression and anxiety and just being uncomfortable in his own skin. And that reminded me a lot of David Beckham after the 1998 World Cup. Another one of Buffon's lowest ebbs came in 2003 when his Juventus team lost the Champions League final to AC Milan. Some months after, he actually had a panic attack on the pitch against Regina and said he felt he was going to die. At this point, when he was in the experience of the panic attack, he was saying he was struggling to breathe, and he actually writes that he had a feeling that if he walked off the pitch at this time, if he asked to be substituted, then that was the point where he would potentially retire. And this feels like a real sliding doors moment, because after this moment, Buffon obviously wins the World Cup, countless Serie A titles. So it's incredible how he managed to recover from this. And at the time, Buffon writes that he started to learn that he needed to become comfortable with discomfort. And yeah, it seemed like at the time there wasn't a great deal of help or acknowledgement in football around these kind of problems. But then Buffon began to find inner peace through art. He walked around a Marc Chagall exhibition and said that he felt lighter, almost as if he was floating. One of Chagall's pieces, which particularly changed Buffon's outlook, was the Promenade. And when you look at this, there's an element of perhaps, staying grounded or making sure that you're not being, pulled across by external forces. And it's interesting because I've taken up art and painting in the past as well. And I definitely feel in terms of mental health, it's, a really good sense of escapism. And perhaps Buffon experienced something similar. So overall, this is such an authentic look at the career and life of a goalkeeper, and it really positions goalkeepers as perhaps, the odd one out or a bit of a cast-off. In terms of the mindset of the goalkeeper, Buffon writes about how he would study penalty takers' mannerisms, their body language, their body shape, and this really, really helped him in terms of spot kicks. One penalty save he's particularly proud of is against Brazilian Ronaldo when he's playing for Inter Milan. He also writes about the differences between, management styles he's encountered, like the calm and collected Max Allegri and the thundering Antonio Conte. One passage which stood out was around Buffon's betting, because he said that although he didn't bet on football, he actually betted on basketball and tennis. And this was interesting to me because, if I'm running a football club and I know that, my players are on, for instance, Bet365, if they're betting on boxing, cricket, whatever it is, fair, they're not breaking any rules. But if you're on those websites, you're going to be absolutely bombarded with advertising around football, around football gambling. So, yeah, I just don't think they should be doing any betting. Obviously, who am I to tell footballers, what to do? But when they've got so much money and so much time on their hands, yeah, I'm hoping that in the modern industry, this is something which football clubs really look at more deeply, because it's definitely a problem, especially when betting is so accessible. So although I definitely think this is a very worthwhile and nostalgic read, there were some points of the way the book was structured which just jarred a little bit with me. I've already spoken about how I'm not sure Italian translates to English brilliantly well. I had this feeling when I was reading Pirlo and Totti's books. There's also parts of the book which are quite kind of scattergun, really, really fast-paced, which is fine, but I sometimes struggled to keep up with the periods of Buffon's life that he was talking about, because this is very much a memoir. It's very much like assorted thoughts rather than a biography. And I just felt that, the pacing just jarred a little bit with me. It's a minor criticism, but I think it definitely, affected my enjoyment of the book in places. So there you have it. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure you don't headbutt anyone, especially in a World Cup final, and see you soon.